Hello, it's Bookish Talk, the shorter version of iBookBinding's podcast. Today, our guest is Lori Sauer, and we wanted to talk about one of the recent bindings of yours, the binding she made for last year's Booker Prize shortlisted books. Hi, Lori.
Hello.
My co-host is Pavel, and I'm Stepan. And we just go into it right away. Could you please tell us a bit about this binding, about this project, about the book?
Okay, can I back up a little bit? Because I'd like to explain. I have a particular method. When the Booker Prize comes around every year, and the fellows are all sent an email to say, are you interested? We say yes or no. Then the organizer will choose the six. We can only do it every other year normally. Mm-hmm. And then what I do, if it's a year I'm going to work, I wait until July when they announce the long list. And then I look at those books, there's 13 of them, and I read reviews and I read synopses of the narrative. And I usually pick two that I think will make it onto the shortlist. Mm-hmm. Every time I've been right. And then I read them because I want to have read it before the announcement of the shortlist, because the shortlist isn't announced in September. Mm-hmm. Because it makes me really, I get a bit anxious if I think that I'm only given the book on the day of the announcement and then I have to read it and design it. So I always start in July, try and second guess the judging. And I've done it 7 times, and every time I've picked the book that I wanted to do.
Well, that's an impressive version of bingo.
Yeah. So that's what I did again this year. I read 2. I preferred The Shadow King, and I read it, so I'd already been kind of developing some ideas and things of where I wanted to go with it.
How many times have you done the Booker bindings before?
This is my 7th.
Did you join the project from the very beginning? When did it all start?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure when the first one started with DB. I wasn't there at the beginning, that's for sure. My first one was 2005, but it'd been going for at least 15 years before that. I'm guessing, I'm not sure.
Tell us a bit about this book that you've chosen this year.
Okay, The Shadow King takes place in Ethiopia in the 1930s. And it's about the invasion of Ethiopia by Italy. And it focuses around the Ethiopian people who have fled into the mountains to kind of repel the Italian troops. And so it's just this bit of a war going on. And it's very brutal, very violent, and very dark. It's written quite, I think her style, Maaza Mengiste, the author, it's very poetic and very beautifully written, even though there are these horrible things happening in the book itself. And that's it. So it's historical, but her characters, I believe, are her own creation. There's one Italian person that he's called the Butcher of something or other, who was an actual historical character, mm-hmm. an Italian officer. But the other characters in it are ones of her own.
And the author is Ethiopian herself?
She is. She lives in New York now, but Ethiopian by birth, yeah.
Was it important for you that the author is a woman? Do you prefer to, let me rephrase that, could you have told that it was written by a woman if you didn't know?
No, I don't think so. She did write the women characters very well, and sometimes men don't achieve the same. But yeah. I wouldn't have said one or the other, and I don't prefer a woman author. I look at the story and kind of what it's about and where it's set, and the reviews guide me.
What was your process in selecting the themes for the binding itself, the techniques, the feel, the colors, the textures?
And let me please add a bit to this question, as this is not the first book you're binding for you. Are there any similar processes that you follow throughout the years with different book you're bindings?
Apart from trying to guess who's going to be on the short list.
Yeah.
No, not really. No. I approach all my books pretty much the same way, in that I start with kind of materials and colors that come to mind. I'm not a figurative designer. They're always very abstract and they're always quite minimal. And so I'll choose colors and materials that I like, that I think will fit with the story. I'm not trying to illustrate the story as such with anything obvious. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I think a lot about the structure, because I always start with that. They're all different. I never bind in the same way twice, or very rarely. I like the mechanics of a book and how you attach boards. If it's going to be a very rigid board, or if it's going to be semi-flexible or softer. And yeah, I think a lot about the structure and what that's going to do, and how it will influence my use of materials. And you don't always see what the structure is with the finished product, but I have spent a great deal of time. And this one in particular is quite complicated. It looks really simple on the outside. Underneath, it's very complicated. It's a crossed structure binding, but one that I've modified. I mean, there's lots of versions of the cross structure, and this is even another one of how I attach the spine and to cover up, because usually you see the weaving straps on those books, and I didn't want to see those. I made the cover so that it was twice as long. In fact, I have a cover that was a reject here, and I made it twice the book width, fold it back on itself to the outside, from the inside to the outside, and cover up those straps so you wouldn't see them. And I chose this time, I almost exclusively bind in vellum. And this time I decided instead to use stone veneer. And I don't know if you're familiar with stone veneer.
Yeah, it's a very interesting material, and I never used it, but I understand it's not very easy to work with it.
It's just like paper.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Could you explain for me, what is it actually? How is it made?
Well, it was developed in Italy initially for the car industry. I think that's still where it's used a lot. And it's actual stone. They do slate and they do quartz. As far as I know, those two stones, and each one they have about 6 different shades of the stone. And they use a laser to shave it down to about 1 millimeter or less. It's tiny. And then they back it with whatever this is, some kind of a polyester backing that holds it all together. And I think they probably spray the front so that any flaking or chipping, that it helps to keep everything together. But every so often on some of the markings, I don't know if you can see this, on some of the markings, you can feel the actual stone and it will flake off. This has been laminated together back to back, so I have the same on both sides, and it makes it a bit more rigid as well. But it behaves just like paper.
So this texture is the actual texture of the stone. It's continuous.
It's the stone. It's the how they do it, I don't know.
Amazing. Is it difficult to work with?
No. As I said, it's just like paper.
Is it durable?
It's stone. Yeah. you could eat your dinner off it and wipe it clean.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
an interesting new use for the books. Not really new, yeah. Many generations did that, but
Yeah, no, it's just really tough stuff. And they use it on the dashboards and interiors of cars, and I think now they're using, people using it to put on their walls, so interior use. And Shunevrar introduced me to it because she uses it a lot in her work. And she was contacted by the maker in Italy because she'd been in touch with them before about something, and they said, "Are you interested in trying out this new material?" And she said, "Yeah, okay." And so they sent her some, and now she uses it. A lot of her work over the last, 10 years has been in stone veneer.
So it wasn't vellum binding, it was stone veneer.
So it's stone veneer for the Shadow King. And I liked it because it's dark, and the novel's very dark. And they were up in the mountains. This is where they were hiding, the characters, the Ethiopians. And I thought it just sort of fit. They're up in a stony landscape, and it's dark, but with these beautiful little textures and movement in the material itself that just gives it this nice subtle, that kind of goes along with her poetic style of writing, I thought. So that's what I chose. I decided on this cross structure. What I often do is I make models first, and this is just out of heavy paper, to see how it's going to work, how I can put everything together, and then hide the sewing straps, the weaving straps somehow. This doesn't go nearly as far as the book did, but it gave me enough of an idea to know it would work. And the spine is done in eel skin, and this is exactly what I used. I had 2 of these, and so I used that because, again, it's got this beautiful kind of gray and white coloring to it.
Yeah.
And super soft. And I like the contrast with that, with the stone. And
so the veneers are Italian, and the eels are English, I presume?
no, these come from the Dutchman, Henk de Groot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know this seller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does all kinds of strange little animals.
He has a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is this material very different to normal leather or vellum?
It's very thin and very soft, so it's quite delicate. When I used it for the binding, I backed it with handmade paper, which I think I sent you a photograph that has a picture of this, of a narrow strip with some side pieces on it. That's the handmade paper, because I use those to weave into the slots of the cross structure.
And these gold speckles on the covers, they're tooled, or
Some are tooled and some are flicked with a toothbrush. So I did formal ones with a small dot, and they all focus on the lower part of the design. I'll explain one of the scenes, or what happens in the book, is the Italians, when they captured the Ethiopians and they took them to this prison camp, they took them to an edge of a cliff and pushed them off. This is how they got rid of them. I mean, the way it's described, it's really harrowing. And she uses the motif of birds quite a lot in the book as well. So it's about flying and falling. So that was where the design really stems from, is things coming down either side of the spine and more concentration at the bottom. I'm not going to say that they're bodies, because they're not bodies. It's just symbolic. So the white lines are there, and then the gold dots, and then the flicking with liquid gold, ormaline gold, which comes in liquid, and I just would flick it.
And what about those linear, I assume they're inlays?
They're inlays, yeah.
What are those made of?
Those are paper, I think. They're paper. I'm pretty sure, yeah. And I played around a lot. At the beginning stages, when I'm laying out all my materials, and I put colors together and I put materials together and I kind of scoot them around and I see what goes with what. And I take lots of photographs on my iPad, just quick little shots of one design, and then I move something, I take another shot because I don't always remember what I've done, so that then I can line them up and see which ones I like and which ones I don't. And I started with dark blue lines because the fly leaves are blue suede. And so I put blue on the outside and it made the whole thing really dark. And it took weeks, not weeks, I didn't have weeks, but it took a long time before I put the light ones in, and that worked. So it's just, you know, experimenting and trying.
So you don't use drawing or anything?
I do a lot of sketches. And I also, after I lay out all the materials and I made the little model, paper model, I also will sometimes take the colors that I've chosen, the materials I'm going to use. And so this one is a dark gray, and I might get a dark gray piece of paper, cut that out, and then I make them. I don't do this much of this digitally at all. Then I lay out and I make like little paper designs and cut little strips here and there and lay them on and move them about. So I do that apart from sketching. Sketching's the first stage. The next stage is making paper collage, kind of mock-ups, little mock-ups and things.
I was wondering why is book structure so important for you, especially when you can't see much of it from.
I find it challenging to think about new or slightly varied ways of attaching things. I think a book is it's a three-dimensional object that has hinges. And so the traditional forwarding process that you do and then you lace on the boards, I haven't done one of those for years. I just love structures. And I also tend to, this one, it was hidden, most of it, but it allowed me to have the spine, to get the spine on the way I wanted, and to don't have any joints or grooves anywhere at the hinge, and so that the boards would flex right at the point. And the book isn't backed, it's just rounded. I often use design elements to emphasize the structure as well. So I think they go hand in hand. It's like the Bauhaus thing, you know, that you don't have one without the other. Just something that I really love, and I find it artistically challenging and stimulates my mind, and I don't get bored doing the same thing over and over. And
were there any challenges, some challenges with this binding, and what was the most challenging Booker Prize binding you ever made?
Oh gosh, you didn't prepare me for that.
Sorry.
I think the most interesting one, my first one, back in 2005, I'm a very slow binder. And to have these confines of just this window of about 4 weeks to do something, I thought, okay, I'll try it. I'll just make myself jump in there and do it. So when I did the first one, it was also a cross structure. And I found it so liberating to work quickly, and the structure in that one was used really, it was tied in really closely with the materials I used and the colors and the changes and the weaving and all that kind of thing. And so in a way, maybe that was the most challenging mentally, emotionally, to get it done. And it changed the way I worked from then on. So it was a real turning point.
So it was an important experience for you.
It was very important. It just changed, yeah. And I stopped thinking so much about, oh, I have to lace in boards to make a binding that's going to be considered, acceptable and serious, and yeah.
I've just opened the 2005 list of book bindings, and the photos are not signed, but I could see your work immediately.
Oh, really? Interesting.
You,
Yeah,
you,
the
you
Margaret
certainly
Atwood.
have a very difficult to describe style, but it's very much your own. You like minimalist approach, somewhat brutal, and certainly word Bauhaus comes to mind again. It's very structured, very honest book.
I try and pare things back, and I keep paring back and paring back. And there's a binding I'm working on at the moment for an exhibition that's coming up in Brussels for DB later in the year. And this one is so pared back. I'm really nervous. Just, but I think it'll work. Yeah.
Okay. And why do you think that is? Why is your taste and your style like this?
I like to let the contents of the book do the talking. The author is the person who's created this piece. It's their narrative and their story. I do not want to try and interpret really what their message is. And yes, it'll be my style, and it's the way I like to move things along. To just make it very simple and subtle. I like the understatement really about design. And they're ones I think that you have to live with for a while to look at, to kind of get where I'm going, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And who would you say your influences were and are? Are they in the book trade, or are they mainly outside, like architectural?
It's mainly outside. I look a lot at textile design, quilt design. I look at architecture a lot. I look at paintings, abstract painters who I kind of follow, contemporary people.
Like Richter, I assume?
Who?
Karl Richter, his work certainly comes to mind. Could you name any?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Somebody like Eva Hess and her drawings, and Agnes Martin, who I just adore her paintings. So it's that. Yeah, I look outside really of bookbinding, and look at just different materials, different media. I look at things like manholes on the ground, and just the way that people put stones in the ground for landscaping, just all sorts.
This reminds me of what Cornelia Parker says of her process. A few years back, she completed a wonderful sculptural project where she cast cracks in the ground in gold. So she for her, it's also influences from a life, from what she sees on the way to work, and but also of other artists. I like how it all interacts.
Yeah. And, for me, yeah. Sorry.
And what is your background? What is your education?
Fine art, where I was going to be a painter, and then I got so far along and I realized there were too many other people who could paint better than I could. So I first started in architecture, to tell you the truth. I began my university as an architectural student. And then I discovered that I had to design where the pipes went and the water and the electrics. And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. So I just kind of sidestepped into the art department and concentrated on painting. And at the end of when I decided I wasn't going to be a good enough painter, I took up photography, which I did for about 10 years, black and white photography. So it's kind of mixed. And then I did a postgraduate degree in English literature in order to help me think more clearly about visual narrative, verbal narrative, visual narrative. And that was really hard because it was very, very academic from an art background. And so yeah, that's where I spring from. Binding started much later. I worked in publishing the first few years of my life, and it isn't what I wanted to keep doing because I like to do things with my hands. So I discovered bookbinding.
I guess your interest in different structures also stems from your background in architecture.
Yes, most likely. Yeah.
Are you only interested in designer bookbinding? And by the way, how do you define that field?
Oh, it's so has so many definitions, you know. To everybody, it's a different thing.
I know.
That's what we found out, yeah, during our talks.
It's not the first time I'm asking this question, and I'm yet to receive two identical answers, which is why I'm interested in what you think.
Yeah, because there's people who are more traditional. They like things very formal. The other end is you get the artist books and people who generate their own content. There's some fantastic things happening in that, more in the States, I think, than in the UK. And a designer, bookbinder, gosh, I don't know. Am I one? I don't know. I'm using books as a platform to create images that I find pleasing and I hope communicate something.
It certainly seems that making one-offs is an important principle for you. Or are you just bored repeating yourself?
I get bored. I don't like it. I've had people come in and they say they want 10 albums and they all look alike, and I just take a deep breath and say, okay. And I do them, but I try and avoid that kind of work. Yeah, the one-off, because nothing ever comes out the same again anyway, as far as I'm concerned, because you're in a different place, a different point. You make different mistakes that you have to incorporate into it. Yeah.
Do you use assistants? Because that could help producing a run.
No, to have somebody work with me?
Yeah.
No, I'm too erratic in my schedule in my day. I'm not very well disciplined, and COVID has really emphasized that as well. So sometimes I take a long time to get going in the morning, and I'll be in there at 10:30 at night in my studio doing something, because that's all of a sudden I get an idea and I want to go and work. So I couldn't have somebody with me. I'm not structured enough for that.
Do you work from home? Do you have your studio attached to your home?
Yeah, it's attached. I had it purpose built about 3 years ago, so it's like a barn. I had it built in the style of a local barn made from metal.
So COVID didn't interrupt your working process in any way, or?
It's not the work on bindings, but I do a lot of teaching, and it's completely, knocked all of that out.
Yeah, that's a real problem for many bookbinders.
Yeah, exactly. And I decided not to go down the route of doing stuff online because I'm too much of control or the quality control. I just don't feel that I can do, and the things I teach aren't usually entry level binding. They're a bit more sophisticated, and I think you have to be in person to do that stuff well. I'll just wait until we can do it again.
Yeah, we really hope it will change pretty soon for everyone.
Yeah.
We were also told that this year you were unable to talk to the authors of the books you bound in person, but did you have any kind of feedback from them?
When I sent my book off, I wrote a letter to the author and I stuck it in the box with my book so that it wouldn't get intercepted and taken away. And I put my email at the bottom, and I had an email from her, which was really nice. Just saying thank you and for the time and care and consideration for making it. And
yeah, this is nice.
Yeah. But even sometimes when I first did it, the booker, there would be occasions when the author, we didn't have a chance to even talk to the author when there was a dinner. And that was really frustrating because we didn't sit at their tables. We were shoved, the binders were shoved out to the edge of the room. And and they're all busy with the press and their, their publishers and everything. And so I didn't, like Margaret Atwood, I met for about 30 seconds and then somebody came and took her and whisked her away. And then they changed it so we could sit at the table with the authors, and that was fantastic because we were able to sit and chat to them. So the rest of them I've been able to talk to.
And what kind of feedback did you get from them?
Well, during the dinner, they haven't had the book yet, so they haven't seen it.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Then they get it towards the end, and then they'll open it up. But I mean, they're so full of adrenaline for the evening, they're not going to focus on, the binding. So I just give them space, and they can enjoy their moment of fame, I think. But it is nice, to meet them in the flesh. Yeah.
I can only imagine. I guess we will wrap it up with this topic. Only if you want to add something, Lori, or Pavel want to add another question, but it's
no, I don't think so. I made a list of things to cover, and I think I've covered them all.
Yeah, I think we asked all the questions we wanted to ask, and we talked quite a lot about this binding, and I hope it will inspire other people to try different structures and different materials and experiment.
So do I. That's my mission, really, especially with the master classes I run, to try and really push structures and how interesting they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Lori, for this story and for some insights in how you created this binding. And I would like to say thanks to our viewers and our supporters on Patreon who help us to pay for editing of our podcasts. Thanks everybody. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much for asking. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure. Thank you.